So thanks everybody. I'm going to cover. Let me make sure this is moving. I'm Roger Grimes. I've been doing computer security for 34 years. I always talk super fast. And I've been doing computer security for, like I said, 34 years. Earned all these gray hairs. Written 12 books and over 1,100 magazine articles on computer security. Come on, move slides. There's some of my books. Hacking Multi-Factor Authentication is my most recent book. I work for KnowBe4. We're the world's largest security awareness training and simulated phishing platform vendor. But today I'm going to talk about two incredible ways that you can be hacked through email. They're both fairly, one's more popular than another, but they're both, a lot of people haven't seen both of them. And I think most people, when they see them, are like, oh my goodness. But the first one talks about password hash theft. Most of us know that when you type in a plain text password like frog into to log into an operating system, that plain text password gets converted to a cryptographic hash. And what type of cryptographic hash depends on the operating system. If you had Windows a long time ago, it would be LM landman hash. These days, it's the NT hash. If you had Linux or Apple or BSD back in the day, maybe it was an MD5 hash. Today, it's probably a SHA-2 hash. Or if you're lucky or have OpenBSD, maybe it's bcrypt by Bruce Schneider. It's one of the best hashing algorithms out there. But the idea is that if an attacker was able to break into your system and become admin or root or something like that, and they got a hold of your password hash, they may be able to try to abuse that or crack it, but they didn't get your plain text password, because when you type in your plain text password and it gets converted to that cryptographic hash, it looks like a bunch of gobbledygook. And the only thing that hacker can do is try to crack it, which means if they get your hash, they can upload it to a password hash cracking program or routine. On the screen, I have OptCrack. That's a GUI Windows one, although these days most hackers use Hashcat or maybe John the Ripper or something like that, but usually Hashcat these days. But the hacker would take your hash, upload it to that program, already had uploaded a bunch of password dictionaries where all the words are already pre-hashed, and it would do a hash comparison or some type of something similar to that. And then if they had a match, okay, well, this is your password, it's frog or whatever. But for most of the 3 decades, in order for a hacker to get to your hash, they had to break into your device or a domain controller on your network or something. They had to be local admin or administrator or domain administrator or root. What I'm going to show you today, if you didn't know this, simply opening an email or clicking on a link, most of the time you have to click on the link. You have to be socially engineered, and clicking on a link can transmit your password hash to an attacker. And the way that this occurs is that the hacker has to create a malicious web server that's on the internet, or some type of hacker tool that's claiming that it's a malicious web server. Then they create a URL that points to some type of object, a document, a picture file, or something on that web server. Then they send that link to the victim, often using email. Then the victim gets tricked into clicking on that URL, and then the email program browser will attempt to download that document off that malicious web server, and that web server is going to say, sorry, you can't connect anonymously, you must authenticate to get to this server. And then the email client will start doing what's called challenge response authentication and trying to log into that server, and then that malicious web server can capture that transaction. The hacker can, from the challenge response negotiation session, can capture the hash and then try to crack that hash. And if the password isn't really long, like 12 characters or longer, it can be cracked back to its plain text. And so the hacker, even though the hacker can use the hash itself to do some maliciousness, if they get your plain text password, they can do even more, because then they can log on to GUI websites and things like that that will only accept your plain text password. So this is about that sort of attack. And again, the big deal here is that you can actually get an email, and people oftentimes will say, if I clicked on a link but I didn't run a file, do I need to worry? And the answer is yes, there is a potential. This is not a super popular attack. It is a real world attack that is occurring more often. But if you click on a link, there is a chance that you're transmitting your password hash. I'm getting ready to show you a video demo by Kevin Mitnick. He's our chief hacking officer. He's going to use this trick where the URL has file:// in it, which typically would tell most systems that it's a NetBIOS file retrieval on the local system or local network, but instead he tricks it into connecting to an internet URL, and that tricks the email client into connecting and doing that NT challenge response. If you're interested in seeing this demo again, I've got a link in the slides that you can get when you get the slides, or you can read my CSO Online article I wrote a couple years ago that talks about how all of this works. But I'm going to show you the demo. It's pretty cool if you've never seen it before. But again, Kevin's going to be both the victim and the attacker. He's going to send an email. Person's going to open that email. Usually you have to click on the link, and that's going to transmit the password hash that he then cracks. So let me show you that demo. Here we go.
This is the attacker system in the cloud, in the Amazon cloud in Virginia. And we have, I'm logged into Outlook 365 here. I'm simply just going to click on the email. I just click. It takes a second for Office 365 to load. And here we go. We could see that the email's from Roger Grimes at nsa.gov, which is quite interesting. And there's nothing there. There's no hyperlink to click on. There's no attachment. But if we go over to the attacker system over here in the cloud, we were able to intercept or obtain the victim's NTLM v2 hash. So let's go ahead and try to do this. So we're going to go ahead and highlight this. We're going to copy it. We're going to go over to our password cracker over here. We're going to create a file. Here we go. We're going to paste in the hash. Very simple. And then what I'm going to do is just run a shell script that tries to crack the hash through a dictionary attack. And this is using a tool called local hashcat. And guess what? It's already cracked the hash. So if we scroll up here, we see it was a username Kevin, right? And the password to the hash is Kevin123.
So pretty wild, right? If you've never seen that before, let me get back to my slides. Here we go. So if you've never seen that demo before, Kevin is using something called Responder. Anybody could download that from GitHub. And again, he created this malicious URL that sends this file :/ link, and the victim opens it, and then the email tries to retrieve that object from that URL. The Responder program captures the NT challenge response. He gets the NT hash and then obtains and cracks back to plain text password. People all the time ask me, will this work? Oh my God, does this work in my environment? If I'm using Apple, if I'm using Chrome, I can only tell you that I've done this demo and I've done this similar type of attack in over 100 people's environments. It's always worked. The only difference between Kevin's demo and what happens, and all the times I've done it, is that I have to trick someone to clicking on the link. In his demo, he just showed you opening the email, and that's because he was abusing a certain hole that works that way, but it's been closed now. Usually you have to get someone that clicks on the link. But if you're interested in setting up that exact same demo and you know a little bit of Linux, you have a friend that knows a little bit of Linux, you can download Kali Linux, and if you follow these 10 steps, you can recreate this exact situation in your environment and see if your email clients and browsers and machines and stuff like that can happen. I used to say, hey, this has never been done in the real world. It is now being done in the real world. It happened. Ukrainian attacker or some attacker was attacking Ukrainian targets and Canadian organizations. They even attacked in San Francisco airport. You know, you travel to an airport and they say, click here to go to the Wi-Fi. They actually compromised the San Francisco Wi-Fi airport, and when people clicked to join, it was actually stealing people's hash. Using that exact same trick I just showed you, that file : / people will say, well, how do I stop this? Well, first of all, at the very bottom there, Microsoft, if you're on a Windows machine, Microsoft has a patch, but it's optional. I've never seen any company ever apply it, but if you're worried about this attack, you can apply that patch, and you also have to do some registry configuration. You can filter out inbound file : / links. If you're worried about your passwords being cracked, you need to make them really long, like at least 12 characters long, and really probably 16 characters long. If you have an 8-character Windows password, it can now be cracked in under 15 minutes by lots of people. But also, you may want to consider updating your firewall, making sure that these ports I have on your screen here, especially NetBIOS and what's called the LLMNR ports, are blocked on a host-based firewall and on your network perimeter firewall, because clients should not be connecting to the internet with these ports. These are local area network ports, and if you allow them to get out on the internet, hackers can do interesting things. So pretty interesting. I want to cover the next attack type, and this is one that is actually far more been around for decades, far more popular, but it's so easy to do today that it's almost scary. But for decades, attackers have been breaking into people's email clients like Outlook and Thunderbird and Apple Mail and Gmail and stuff like that, and they've been abusing rules. Rules are things like, hey, if this email comes in from my boss, highlight it, or if it comes in from my mother, put it in this special folder, right? So all of the sophisticated email clients typically have these rules or forms, or in Gmail they call them filters, that allow you to kind of customize your inbox experience. Hackers have for decades have been breaking into people's email clients. They usually had to break in on your machine, and they'd modify these rules to do things. If you've never seen these rules and you have Outlook, Outlook's a very common email client. You can say file, rules, and alerts. Then you go to the rules. Most people don't have any new rules, but an attacker, maybe they want to like copy every email. That's a very common thing. Ransomware will break in and then say copy all the emails from IT security and the C-levels to the ransomware hacker's email account. But they'll say new rule, apply this rule on messages I receive. So this is being applied on the victim's machine, and it says, oh, do you want me to apply this to every inbound message? Yes. And then the attacker says, and then forward every email to this place, rogueperson@rogue.com, whatever. But there's a lot of different rules, a lot of different clients have different things you can do with them. Again, in Gmail, they're called filters. But essentially, anything that these filters and rules and forms allow scripting and programs to be encoded, so that anything that the scripting language is capable of, they can do. Like they can even say, wait for an email to come in that has the word frog, and if it has the word frog, format that machine, or fire off that ransomware program, or replace if there's any outgoing emails with wiring instructions, replace those instructions with our instructions. So these things have been around for a while. I oftentimes, I don't want to say often, but a couple times a year, I'll get calls from people that say, hey, I know a hacker's broken into my email, and we've done everything to try to get him out. We've changed our passwords. I've even got a new laptop and everything, and I can tell the hacker's still in charge. What are they doing? And I tell them, go check your rules and forms, because a lot of the hackers will put a backdoor Trojan in, so that literally all they have to do is send an email out that has some keyword in it that triggers some rule to cause this backdoor to open up what's called a remote shell. And in Outlook, you can start an application, you can run a script, and that sort of stuff. Probably what's new, a little bit newer, is they used to do it with rules. Now they're doing it with forms. And if you didn't know this, a lot of email clients have these forms. Sometimes they're called templates or stationery that makes an email look pretty. If you want to see what the forms are in Outlook, the default ones, you can go to Outlook and go to File Options, Quick Access Toolbar, and you add this what's called Design a Form button. When you add the Design a Form button, it adds these two new buttons called Design This Form, Design a Form. And if you do that, Outlook will show you what forms you have, and here's like the standard 8 or 9. If you didn't know it, every time you get an email that you're looking at, if it doesn't have a customized form to it, it's showed in the default message form. Well, attackers can actually add code into that form. Like here's an example where a hacker says, okay, in this form, I'm going to use what's called Windows Scripting Shell to run Netcat. nc.exe is Netcat. It's a hacker tool to connect back to the rogueserver.com across the internet over port 443, so maybe it's not scannable. And then they say in execute command comp. So what this is a script that they could put in the message form that if someone sends an email would trigger this Netcat Trojan to open up a remote reverse shell to the attacker's machine. So this is this is a simple version of what they do today. And then you can actually publish, a hacker, if they break into your email client, can actually create a form called anything, let's say frog or standard inbox form. They can then go to their machine, create a form called standard inbox form, let's say. They can send any email to you, and what you don't realize is that email that looks like just some regular type of spam, or maybe it doesn't have anything on it, it actually it's like, oh, standard inbox form? Why, yes, I have a standard inbox form, and then it triggers it. And it triggers the script that they've hidden in that. The problem with it is that no antivirus picks up these rogue rules and rogue forms and that sort of stuff. And there's hackers like using what's called Empire PowerShell to create these rogue rules and forms, and they actually can use it to do it remotely. And there's another tool, there's a white hat hacking tool made by a great company called Sensepost called Ruler, that allows you to create these rogue forms. And again, hackers have been doing this for years using a very common hacker tool called Empire PowerShell. But you can use, and if you go to use that for the first time, it could take you a day or two to learn. But you can use the Sensepost Ruler tool, very easy, free download from GitHub. All you have to do is have the victim's email address and password, and that's not that hard to get. Heck, I might just be able to send you a link, and if you click on the link, I get your login name and password. But essentially, using Empire PowerShell or the Ruler tool, we can literally send somebody an email that installs a rogue form and then triggers it and gives the attacker a reverse command shell. So from email address and password to complete compromise of the device to probably complete compromise of your environment. I'm going to show you another demo. Here's the link to it if you want to watch it later on. But again, what they're going to do is send a reverse command shell. They're actually going to encode Empire PowerShell to create this reverse backdoor. Wait a minute, that's not what I wanted. Here we go. So let me make sure you can see this. Can you all see this?
Yeah, we can see that. Looks good. We've got about 5 minutes left.
Yep, I'm on it. So here is the tool. What you see at the top is, this is the attacker's machine. At the top, they're running the Sensepost Ruler tool. The first thing they're going to do is just check to see which version they have. They have 2.1. At the bottom, let me go back there. At the bottom, they actually had the Empire PowerShell program running, and what they're showing is right now there's no listeners, there's no reverse command shells open to it. So that's the attacker's machine. Then they're going to go simulating the victim's machine. They're showing you that they were running Outlook, Microsoft Outlook. They're going to say, oh, they're going to show you there's no rules or forms right now. On the right-hand part of the screen, they're actually running Microsoft sysinternals Process Explorer, and they're just showing you there's no reverse command shell doors. But in a minute, when they do this trick, it's actually going to show you PowerShell kicking off, and you'll see a program called conhost. That's the reverse command shell going back to the attacker's machine. So they're going to go back to the attacker's machine. All they have is the victim's email address and password. Here they are, and they're actually saying, show us what forms are currently there. They put in the password. Essentially, they just made sure the email address and password worked. Now they're actually going to add, and they're down below, they're showing you there's no Empire PowerShell agents running. Now they're showing you this encrypted version of Empire PowerShell, which is this mega hacker tool. And they're going to ship that encrypted version of Empire PowerShell to this victim's machine and trigger it. So they're going to create a new form called demo, and then trigger it, installing the Empire PowerShell, and that will automatically create this reverse command shell. And all they had was the email address and password. So here we go. It's running, it's going. There, it sent it, it created it. It's like email sent. You'll see on this side, you'll see an email arrive, and if you look on the right-hand side, you're going to see PowerShell and conhost pull on up. There it is, just an email, boom. Reverse command shell done. All they had was an email address and password, and now they have Empire PowerShell remote listening agent, complete control of the desktop. Now they'll dump passwords and service passwords and all that sort of stuff. So that is literally all it took. Let's see if I can close this out, get back to my, here we go. So just to close off here, just, be careful about these sort of tools. Use MFA when you can on email so that your password being stolen doesn't compromise you. But bigger, you need to check for at least every 6 months to a year for rogue rules and forms. Most people don't even know they have rules or forms. Microsoft actually created a script for Office 365 called Get All Tenant Rules and Forms you can run to see if there's any non-default rules and forms. Sensepost made a tool called Not Ruler that works on on-premises Exchange servers. For Gmail and some of the other clients, you have to make your own scripts, but that's what I'll leave you with. And of course, if you want to find out if your passwords are already out on the internet, we have a cool tool called the Password Exposure Test tool that you can download and use for free. I'm running out of time, but if you have any questions about these two attacks, you can email me at rogerg@noble4.com, and I will respond to your email within 24 hours. And we also, you can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter.